Hey guys, I had a thought, so I thought I would pop on here and do a Facebook Live with you pretty quick. There's kind of question came up over the weekend for me with some people I was talking to, and it kind of was eating at my brain. So I thought I would kind of go and talk about this. Basically, if you're an owner, you have three responsibilities for your business to grow it, and ultimately, this is besides if you're a small company and you're still in the field. There's beside that stuff. To be an owner, these are the owner responsibilities. So the first one is the responsibility to keep your schedule full. You've got to keep the schedule full, and obviously, if you're not, and you got to be able to do that year round. Now that's pretty easy in the busy season for most companies. For most companies, if it's busy out, you don't have much trouble keeping your schedule full and getting your phone to ring and whatever else you want to call it. But the idea being that you've got to keep your schedule full with things that are predictable. And you have to do it in a predictable way. So the second thing you have to do is you have to have a sales process in place so that you can consistently get sales coming into your business. That does not mean that you have to run around lying to people or any of that stuff. That's not what it means. It just means you have to have a consistent way to get people that need something done for them to say yes to having you do it, and not having, I want to think about it, let me call you back, and all the BS answers that people give us. If you have a consistent process for that makes sense, then people will buy things from you and that. So the third thing you have to have is proper pricing so that when you do sell something that you're making profits. So those three things, if you're not doing them properly throughout your organization, are one of the major stumbling blocks, if not the major stumbling block to being able to grow effectively. And I just see it so often where someone basically comes, and I talk to people every day. I talk to business owners all the time, and I hear this one a lot. They start with the first one. They always start with, everything's going good, I just need more customers. And maybe that's true, but what I found is that most of the time that's not really the case. Now, you're going to eventually need more customers, because if you're trying to grow, that's going to be the name of the game. But ultimately, the list I just gave you, which was keep the schedule full, which is get more customers, or at least get your old customers on the schedule, right? The second thing is the sales process, and the third thing is the numbers. You really need to be building that backwards. You need to get your numbers in place first, straight up front, because it's way faster to become profitable starting with what you already have than to go out hunting for something else that you don't have. So the first thing that we always work with when I'm talking to someone is we build this backwards. We always start with getting those numbers correct so that you know the difference, what your margin really is on the sales you're making before you're making them. And I talked to somebody the other day that was effectively just giving some kind of guidelines to his guys, but every single one of his guys, and he had like a bunch of them. So he had a bunch of guys, and each of the guys was out there in the field just kind of making up numbers all the, so Raphael says, Ted, where can I get tools and equipment on good price? I have planned to start a business next summer. Well, Raphael, if you're you're going to have to look with your local suppliers and that to get equipment and tools and pricing, but it's a much bigger question there. So obviously, if you're trying to start a business next summer, then you're going to need a lot more knowledge about how to run a business than most people have when they start. And believe me, I'm not pointing fingers. When I started my business in 1988, I was so naive about everything I thought I knew. I thought, well, if you just buy this thing for this price and sell it for that price, you get to keep the money and it's a profit. Doesn't really work that way, unfortunately, for most of us. So in the end, I'm not pointing fingers, but what I've learned over a 30-plus year career is, what I pass on now to my clients as a coach. And effectively, what you've got to do, number one, is get the numbers right, because that's the biggest lesson I ever learned way back in the day, was to do that. And that means actually understanding what your direct costs really are, what your overhead really is, and what the difference between the two is, making sure that you have a process in place so that you can be consistent. Because as I was saying a few minutes ago, I talked to a guy earlier this week where his prices for the same thing could be completely different depending on which of his guys told the customer. And first of all, it's not good for the customers. Customers don't like that. They don't want to find out from their neighbor or their friend that used you too that they paid a different number for the same thing. And that can happen pretty consistently. If you're charging like time and material or something, we get it. It could take longer. But the fact is, if changing out a motor takes an hour and you send a rookie over there and it takes 2 hours, well, how is it fair to the customer that you sent a guy who wasn't as skilled and he paid more? So ultimately, you need to work these things out so that your business as an entity has a consistency for profitability. Because frankly, in that particular case, of a rookie taking longer on time and material, you're actually, to use the bad term, ripping people off if you really come down to it. For the quality of work you're doing and the amount you're paying, that the customer's paying for it, they're paying you more for a less quality technician. And that takes longer and that kind of thing. Now frankly, you can make more money with crappy technicians in that model. I don't believe in that. I believe that you want to have the best technicians out there. You want to have, the best service out there. And what you want to do is get your numbers in place first so you can afford to do that. After you do that, the dilemma you run into is, okay, now I've got these new pricing numbers, so we have to learn how to present those prices properly, which leads to the second thing in our backwards equation, which is a sales process. And by sales process, again, I don't mean like, a bunch of scripts with a bunch of guys learning how to be like used car salesmen or, door-to-door encyclopedia stuff. None of that crap. Most of the sales techniques that are taught in this business over the last 30 or 40 years have been based on stuff that was, developed 40, 50 years ago to sell like door-to-door vacuum cleaners and encyclopedias and life insurance and stuff. It worked 50 years ago on our grandparents. It doesn't work as well now. And because it feels icky, just do something to people. Like I'm doing it to them. It's much more fun to deal with people we're doing on a peer basis, where we're talking one-on-one with someone and having a great rapport in that and basically just helping solve their problem. So, but you have to be consistent with it so that each of your guys in your organization is doing it the same way, so that one person doesn't have one experience and someone else has a completely different experience with somebody else. So that's where you got to get a process in place for your business to be set up a training program so that it's consistent. It doesn't take a lot. It takes like 10, 20 minutes a day, but consistently every day to get this training program in place. Once you're there, suddenly the price objections you were having go away because the customers are really happy dealing with you. I've got folks that work with me that say they basically, double, triple, quadrupled their price, and nobody complained because they just learned how to do it without having any kind of headache. So finally, it leads to where you learn to do marketing and try to go get new customers. And it's so shocking to me how many businesses can improve so fast without ever getting a new customer. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't do that, but you shouldn't do that first. In the end, you need to go and try to get your business, all your ducks in a row and things in order first before you try to grow. And the reason why, because I've seen this a bunch of times. If someone is not making really good profits because they really don't know any better about their numbers in that, and you kind of quote think you're making money, but you don't really know for sure how much your margin really is and how much your net profit really is. And I'm not talking about like what you're reporting to the IRS or whatever. I'm talking about the real number. Okay, if you don't know what that is and maybe you're losing money, it's actually quite common. And then the worst thing in the world to do is to grow your business and explode it faster because you just lose money faster. You don't want to do that. Okay. One of the first things we do, again, is get the numbers right. Once we do that, we usually see a dramatic increase in profitability. I have a client that sent me a message the other day that said that he did less work this year. He took all of last year's year-to-date number. So far this year, he's hit almost that number year-to-date. So he almost doubled the business. But the funny part was that in the 6 months he did that he did less jobs and made like 60% more net profit at the bottom by working less. So that's really, and the complaint is, hey, I didn't get all the jobs I went after. And, that sort of, for a lot of guys, it kind of nags in the back of their head, why do they want to get that job? But you know what? You're not supposed to close all the jobs. You're supposed to close all the ones that were closable. And if they're looking for the cheapest guy in town and you're the highest quality guy in town, they're probably just not your customer, and that's okay. But you want to make sure you're making money on the ones who are a good fit for you. And so that's what he discovered, is like, my gosh, I have a lot more money now net that I actually got to keep in the bank at the end of this. And we didn't even work as hard. We did like 25% less jobs, but made like 60% less more profit. But also realizing that he's comparing 7 months of a year to 12 months of last year. So he's actually quite a bit ahead of the game. And so this is a company that's pretty small too. There's only a couple people that work there. It's not like 20 trucks or something. So but that's a pretty common story. So ultimately, the conversation that we're having is based on what those three things are. So Trenton says, Ted, I struggle with knowing what my cost has to be. Of course, I throw prices down on the spot since it's just me. Okay, well, that Trenton, that's the problem. Like, if I'm talking to you, dude, we need to talk, okay? This is not hard to figure out, and you just need to learn to get some mathematical things, and it's not your fault. First off, if you're a service tech that started a business, you probably, just like me, you were not trained in how to do accounting and things like an MBA would be trained. Fortunately, a few years after I started my business, I got married to an MBA, and I learned real quick that these things aren't right, and we figured it out like within a couple of years. I get some great mentors also, and that. So ultimately, Trenton, if you need help with that, just let me know, and we'll have a chat, and I'll help you figure it out. Okay, no big deal. So ultimately, that's the way it works. So let's see here. Anybody else got anything else going on there? Yeah. Let's go get wasted. Well, if that's what you want to do. I mean, not my thing to do, but okay. Ultimately, though, guys, you got to get those things in place. Three things. You got to get the pricing right. You got to get a sales process so that you can sell at those prices, and you have to be able to go get new customers. You cannot afford to do that till you get the other two in place. It doesn't work that way, because you won't have any resources to be able to throw at your marketing plan. And then once you do that, it's probably a whole nother conversation, but a lot of folks are saying, should I use Facebook or Google or direct mail or, what company or HomeAdvisor or Edgie's or all these different platforms. And the platform is really, the secondary thing. The primary thing is, what is your marketing message? And then it doesn't matter if you use the telephone or the radio or a billboard or whatever to send it out there, as long as the message is effective and it's reaching the audience you want to see. Now, having said that, there are platforms that are a whole lot more cost effective. For example, Facebook costs about 1/10 as much as Google does, or less. Then it can cost like 10 to 20 times less than Google does per click. So you can get to a bigger audience faster with Facebook than Google. The difference is that there are two different audiences. Google is someone who's shopping right away, and Facebook is someone who's not shopping, and you have to know how to do the difference, and you have to know how to set the messaging up for the proper audience. And that kind of thing. So it does matter. The platform does matter a little bit, but ultimately, when someone says, I tried Facebook, it didn't work, it's usually because the messaging they sent was bad, the targeting was bad, they didn't stay with the platform enough, to give you the 10-second version of that. If it's costing you $100 or $200, let's say, to get a new customer, and you need to know your cost, by the way. We're circling back around to knowing your numbers. If you know it cost you $200 to get a new customer, and you said, I'm going to experiment with Facebook, and I spent $50 and nothing happened, well, no kidding. I mean, you didn't spend enough money yet for anything to happen. So you've got to spend enough in that platform to refine it. And let's face it, like anything else, if it's the first time you're doing it, you're not going to be good at it. You have to get better at it as you go. So yeah. So Andy Phillips says, building a quality crew and office staff. Any tips? Yeah, actually, it all ties into the same thing. There's a couple of folks that I see are on here that are actually clients of mine, and they can probably tell you also that the biggest key to building quality crew and office staff is to have those resources. Get your pricing stuff right. It's kind of a chicken or the egg problem, right? But in the end, you get better at hiring great people when you have a better place for them to work that's more profitable in that, because the great folks want to be on the superstar team. So in the end, if you're an owner, it comes down to you. You've got to build that organization that everyone wants to work at, and that kind of thing. So Andy, again, if you need to chat, let's do that. I'm happy to chat with you. But ultimately, if you want to attract the best talent, either in the office or in the field, you're going to have the great place they want to work. And the long-term plan is you have to be able to develop great service techs from scratch. if you want to build a great business for longevity. Because at some point, as you grow, if you're running 3-4 people and you need one more, you might get lucky and find a guy. But if you're running a larger company where you've already got a dozen and you need to hire 4 or 5 more, the chances of you finding 4 or 5 more, like a great new guy every month or two, is probably a lot slimmer than it would be if you're just trying to get lucky if you're a one-truck operation. And as you grow, you're going to have to be able to get those training processes in place where you can take someone who doesn't know anything and within a period of time turn them into someone who's useful to you. That's the real key to it. And let's face it, every single great technician at one point was a rookie who sucked. And that doesn't mean that you have to have people who suck and send them in the field, but you got to teach them somewhere. So that's going to be your real trick, Andy, is to figure that out. So, and then Brian says, what would you suggest to focus on before you start a business to be better prepared? Brian, what I would focus on is mindset, actually. The service technician mindset is one of, because here's kind of the progression for the average guy who is a service tech that's going to start a business, right? They know how to do the service work and they're usually pretty good at it, and believe me, I was one of those guys, right? I'm 30 years into this, 35 years as a tech into this, and yeah, I still know how to work on systems and stuff. I haven't touched tool bag in a few years because I don't do that anymore. But as a tech, you start off with, I know this business because I can fix everything. And ultimately, that's the mistake, is to realize there's an entire another skill set as an owner that no one has taught you, and you're going to have to figure that out. And there's really 2 ways to do it. You can go and learn it through the school of hard knocks, and in some cases come very close to bankruptcy and very close to having your business close and that. And ask me how I know, because a long time ago, in the late 80s and early 90s, I was, struggling along with that until I figured it out. So ultimately, that's the real key to it, So there you go. And Zach, hey Zach, how you doing, man? I saw you were here. Dennis definitely helped me build a great team, help me get rid of the slackers. Yeah, that's the other thing is, when we were talking about the hiring, is hire slow, fire fast. Build a process where you can hire great people and fire them fast. But circling back to Brian's question, if you're gonna start a business, you're gonna have to learn the business skills. One is the school of hard knocks, and the second way is to just pony up and get somebody like a coach like myself or somebody that's going to be able to shortcut that process for you down. Most of the time, what I found with my own hiring of my own mentors, and I've done it throughout my career. I've started doing it 25 years ago, and I still do it today. I still hire people who know more than I do about certain things, and I follow their advice and track through it, and really do. And not in the HVAC world anymore. What I'm working with right now is folks who do internet marketing and stuff like on a really high level. But ultimately, you always got to find the people who know the things you don't know and have been where you're trying to go, and just follow their advice, because it'll shortcut your process like crazy. The things that might have taken you 4 or 5 years to figure out, you can do in 3 months, because you just say all these little dead ends that you could go down where you're gonna say, I made this mistake and it didn't work out. You're not even gonna head down that path, because they're gonna tell you, don't even do that. Just do it this way. We know it works, and you'll be much better off. So that's really your key thing there. So Brian says, would you suggest a business class? I'm not sure what you mean, Brian. Give me a little more insight into what you mean by business class. So you're talking about like at the local community college or something? Because that can be helpful, but the problem with college courses is they're kind of just general. Even my wife, who was an MBA, was saying, the things she learned going to college for business, was applicable, but at some point you have to say, okay, how do I apply this? They're doing like case studies on Federal Express and how to improve the package delivery business in school, and you're like, well, how does that apply to me? And you have to kind of sometimes interpolate that. The fastest thing to do is to figure out how to get a good coach. So community college can be helpful if you're trying to learn something like how to do double entry accounting or something like that you might need to know. But what I would suggest ultimately is just find a great business coach. And, again, I'm one of those. There's a few of them out there, and I'm happy to talk to you guys. If you want to talk, there's a really easy way. Here, let me put a link in here. Oops, see if it's taking it's not typing for me. Huh, that's weird. Well, it's not typing. All right. So if you want to chat with me, you just go to tedgravlin.com/booking. or just go to tedgravlin.com, and there's a link in there you can click to book a call, and basically you pick a time and we can chat about it. Anybody wants to do that. I've got slots available. I don't have a lot of slots available because every single day I've got working with clients and things like that. But most days I have a slot or two that I can talk to folks, and I do it for free. So go ahead and book a call. We can chat about your exact situation and figure out how to help you if I can. No problem. So let's see. Eric says, what's your best recommendations on profit margins to figure final cost order price jobs? Well, Eric, you have to know a bunch of numbers, and it's not one single number. Unfortunately, I can't give that answer in 30 seconds here on a Facebook Live conversation. But I will tell you that the things you're going to have to know is you're going to have to know your overhead. You have to make a couple of guesses as to how many jobs you're going to do. So to give you a really fast idea, let's just say that we knew that your overhead was $10,000 a month. So that means, and let's just say that you knew you're going to do 10 jobs a month. So that means you have to have $1,000 of overhead into each job, whether you know it or not. Plus you have to have a direct cost, because there's a cost to the job because you sold it. There's a cost like to buy the equipment is like the obvious one, right? If you don't sell anything, you don't buy anything from your supplier. But if you sell an air conditioner, then you have to buy an air conditioner. So that's not overhead, okay? So you got to figure all those numbers out and come up with a margin that's going to give you enough to give you the net profit that you want at the end of the month, at the end of the year. Okay, so it's a more complicated thing. And if you want to talk about it more, again, book a call, tedgravlin.com, and we can chat about it and figure out where you're really struggling is. Because just from the quick question there, I don't necessarily know where your struggle really is. And let's see. Hunter Thomas says, is insensitive base pay a good or bad idea? I'm not sure what you mean by that. And insensitive based pay. Are you talking about performance based pay? If it's performance-based pay, usually it's a good idea. Depends on your state laws and how you and whether you're able to track it. And you have to have other procedures in place to track hours and overtime and all that other stuff. But I will tell you that when my company was doing its best before I sold it, everyone was on performance-based pay, because it allows you as an owner to know that you're gonna pay really, really well when the results are what you want. And when the results aren't what you want, then you have room for adjustment. And either someone can get better at their job, or maybe they don't want to work there anymore. Maybe they're not a good fit for your company. But I had guys working for me that basically was someone else approached one of my guys one time to offer him a job, and he just said, dude, you can't afford me. And he knew that because the other guy couldn't pay him the 6 figures plus he was making, So basically performance-based pay is the best way to do that, because we were just talking about having known numbers, known overhead, known direct costs. Performance-based pay gives the business a known number for the labor portion of the direct cost. So that's something that's easy to work with as far as managing the pricing, the price setting, and the selling price. So once you get that part right, then everything else trickles downhill, and you start to get the net profit you want to have at the end of the day. How many businesses, just like a show of hands, if you guys want to pop in here, how many businesses do you know that said, I made all this money last year? Oh, I made like 10% profit on $1 million. It's like, okay, do you have $100,000 in the bank? You don't? Well, then you didn't make 10% net. Sorry to inform you. Now, there may be a caveat to that. If you had a bunch of debt and you paid the debt down by $100,000, and that's why you don't have the money in the bank, that's different. But if you're running around telling everyone that you made net profit of X and you don't have the money anymore, then your business didn't make the money. Because your own salary, by the way, is not profit. Your own salary is a cost to your business. You and your business are two different things. You can have the salary you make from getting paid from a job you have. You just happen to work for a company that you own. So at the end, the company didn't make any money if you had to take all the money out because you didn't pay yourself anything and you just took the profit. So that's not profit. So, but sorry to break it to anybody, and I don't mean to be mean about it, but ultimately those are the realities of what's going on out there. So anyway, if anybody wants to chat about this stuff, I'm happy to do it. I've got slots in this week. I'm sure I have some, because it's starting to slow down for you guys, because it's nearing the end of the summer. If you want to book a call, let's do it. tedgravlin.com/booking, or you can just go to tedgravlin.com and find the link there at the top of my page. If there's any other questions that we can go through, we can wrap up here. But I think ultimately, Let's see. Somehow it's liking my typing now. There we go. So yeah, there I just put the link in there. Bottom line, to reiterate what we've been talking about, the 3 responsibilities of an owner is number 1, to keep the schedule full. Number 2 is to have a sales process in place that you know can be consistent. And number 3 is to get your numbers and pricing in place. And when you build it backwards. You build it starting with the numbers, then build the sales process, then go get new customers. So even the questions that were asked about what to do for a new business, it would have to do the same thing. Brian Tucker says, what about maintenance contracts? Why are they so important? Well, you know, that's a really good point. Maintenance contracts are so important because what it does is it reduces your need to have more of those new customers, because ultimately there are only 3 ways to build a business. You can charge more to the customers you have, you can get your customers to do business with you more often, or you can go find new customers. Those are the 3 things that any business, doesn't matter what industry you're in, can do to build their business. So charging more to the customers you have to build your business. You know, for example, if you raise your prices 10%, your numbers grow by 10%, roughly, right? So that fixes things right away if you're struggling. The second one is getting customers to buy from you more often. Maintenance contracts do that. They give customers a reason to see you all the time, like at least once a year, instead of every 5 or 6 years, only when something breaks, and actually build a better relationship. And it reduces the need for the third one to go get new customers. Because let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you need 50 customers a week to keep your schedule full, and you know that in the busy months you have that, you know, in the middle of the summer you have 50 a week. It's not a big deal. But let's just say I've got clients down in the South, like in Texas or Florida or someplace, and like, well, in the wintertime it's slow. We don't have 50 a week. We have like 25. Okay, so you need another 25 customers to fill your schedule that week. So you've got 2 choices. You can have, like, you know, 500 customers under contract and put 25 of them in every week and fill your schedule, or you can go out and try to find several hundred new customers this winter, and the finding new customers is much more expensive. You know, and the other thing with maintenance contracts too is when those people, when they finally get around to 2, 3, 10 years from now, when their system is finally broken enough to where they're going to buy a new one, most of the time, if you've got a great relationship with them, they don't even shop. They don't go get 3 bids. They've been trusting you. You've been doing their thing, and it's what they do. You know, my own dentist, for example, does that. I've got some dental work I had done last week. I didn't go shopping around to have a dental implant done in this tooth right there. I went in to my own dentist that I always see all the time. He said, you need an implant? I said, great, when can you do it? He said, come in tomorrow. I get it done the next day. I didn't shop it around. Same thing happens to our customers. Once they have a relationship with you and they trust you, they are going to just do business with you. That's why you want to get them under contract. So anyway, thanks, guys. Been going about 28 minutes here. So if there's any other questions, I'll answer them. If not, then we'll sign off, and we'll just go ahead, book a call if you want to. I'd love to talk. I actually kind of geek out on this stuff, believe it or not. It's one of the reasons why I love coaching people so much, because for me, it's really fun to actually dig in and find out what's going on. So what'll happen on that call, if you do book them, by the way, here's a couple things that'll happen. We're going to dig into the reality of what's going on for your business, get real clarity, not fooling yourself, not kidding around. Like, this is where your profit really is. This is where the challenges really are. We will build a plan from where you're at to where you want to go. We will do that in the hour that we talk. And if I can help you with it, then I'll offer to do that. If it's not a good fit, then I'll just tell you where else to go and get some more help. That's the way it works. It's pretty simple. So I do that because, for one thing, I just love doing it. And second thing is, you know, to be selfishly, yeah, I'm going to get a few clients out of it once in a while. But some of the people that I talk to, I don't even offer to help because I know it's not a good fit. But that doesn't mean it's not a good conversation. It's probably my goal on those conversations is for it to be the best business conversation you have this year. That's my goal. I want it to be the best thing you talk about and get yourself some real clarity on what's really going on. And, you know, no obligation, no cost. Go ahead and we'll talk. So again, the 3 things you need to be doing: go get some customers, build a sales process, get your numbers right. Okay? Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.